And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. Today's video selection actually comes from my own personal list that is also in the book. So there's everyone's suggestions, and everyone is, has their own little spot, and I write down the suggestion they give. And then I also have the ones that I would like to get to at some point, and it's smack dab somewhere in there as well, and I just happen to get to those as well. And if you've been noticing, I have a fair few different characters that I go with, and one of them tends to be the kaiju of Godzilla, of the Godzilla universe. And here we have Mothra, the quote-unquote queen of monsters, if you will. Now, again, when I talk about like a Godzilla or a Mothra or a Kong or whatever, we're obviously turning them into a human character that could have a Pokemon team. That's what we're doing. But still with every trait that is expressed by the actual monster themselves. Now, this turns into a bit of an interesting little thing because, not even interesting, you would think that this entire team would be nothing but bug-type Pokemon. And you'd be about 80% right. Going through here, looking up the mons that fit the abilities, style, personality, whatever, of Mothra, it does come off mostly as a bug-type team. But one mon on the team does stand out among the rest. We'll get to that one near the end. But let's get to it right now. Obviously, being a moth, we would like a moth Pokemon on the team. And there actually are, despite all the bug-type Pokemon out there, there are surprisingly few actual moth Pokemon. Bug-type Pokemon, how many bug-type Pokemon actually are there? That is a good question. I know water, I believe, is the most common type in Pokemon. Of the 900 plus Pokemon, I think like a third of them, not even a third, well over 100 of them are water types. Which, when you actually break down the fact that there's 18 types and try to do it evenly, it's actually quite a lot of them. So let me see here. Bug type. Hold on. How many bug types are there actually? Let's see here. Oh, 93. 93 bug Pokemon in total. So that's a lot of Pokemon. But when you actually break down the math of how many are based off of moths, there's actually only 3 or 4 of them that are actually based off moths. And I can tell you right now, a good chunk of them did make the list. One of them did not make the list, and I believe there was, or maybe 5 actually, now that I think about it and looking back even more. So 2 of them, of the 5 didn't make the list. Now, 3 of them did, obviously, and we'll get to that right now. The first one, who I immediately knew had to be on the list, is pretty much the strongest of any of these on the team, save for the last one we'll talk about, Volcarona. Volcarona is one of my personal favorite Pokemon, not just bug Pokemon. It's got a fantastic design. It's actually a powerhouse Pokemon. Bug Fire is actually a really good typing. Same with Centiskorch as well. That thing is very powerful. But Volcarona is the OG Fire Bug, and it just looks massive, impressive. It's got these great wings. It also can represent, at least in the MonsterVerse Legendary Universe films, the idea that it was Mothra that helped Godzilla go thermonuclear, turning into Burning Godzilla. So that fire type can be added there as well. But it's pretty much the kind of de facto fire bug type. And unless they decide to, I don't know, do a Pokemon that is beyond, like a legendary bug Pokemon or a pseudo-legendary bug fire Pokemon, which I doubt they ever will. This mon is going to be probably the strongest fire bug we ever have to see. Honestly, no joke, you could have made the Larvesta Volcarona line a pseudo-legendary, had a middle stage, because it involves a little 50-freaking-9. That is my one issue with this Pokemon. It takes you forever to get one, which sucks. Even in like the fan games, where you can actually start with a Larvesta, it still takes you forever to get to one. Even if you were to grind, 59 is freaking insane. Like, honestly, you could have had it at 55, would have been suitable. Honestly, 55 would have been suitable, because we have mon that do evolve that high. I believe Dragonite evolves that high. Or was it level 50? 50 or 55. You have mon that evolves that high, and really, that was kind of like the cap. Until the only exception is freaking Hydreigon at 64. I do not understand what their idea was in Gen 5 of making so many of those evolutions so far off. I really don't. But you could have easily had like a weird Fire Cocoon Stagemon in between them, and this could have been a pseudo-legendary, bump up the stats. So, I don't know. But Volcarona, that's your first moth Pokemon. Another moth Pokemon that made the list is the OG moth Pokemon. Now, Butterfree is a butterfly. Venomoth is a moth. And it follows the trope of Mothra being able to use, like, poisonous powder to stun, put an enemy to sleep. It just fits that. Mothra is often described as being poisonous, venomous. And yeah, that falls well into the idea of Mothra. It just works in its benefit. It doesn't really look, in fact, it looks more like Batra, to be honest. And that's another kaiju I can eventually do a team for. But it's still a Pokemon that is very, apt for this type of team, and it fits one of the motifs of Mothra. The last moth Pokemon that made it to the team. Now, I had to choose. I had also Dustox, I had Frostmoth, I had Mothim. Mothim didn't work because even though technically the kaiju are genderless, most of them are given pronouns. They are given, like Godzilla is a he. Mothra is usually depicted as a she. So I knew I couldn't do Mothim because that's a male evolution of the Burmy line. Sorry. Wormadad is the evolution there. It's the male evolution, so you can't do Mothim. So it's like Dustox or Frostmoth. And I went Frostmoth, honestly. It is the more distinct, honestly, it seems to be, even though its stats aren't as large as Volcarona's, I don't think they are anyway. That's an easy check. I got the list up here right now. Are its stats? Because Volcarona has, I believe, like a 550 base stat. What is this guy's base stat? Or this lady's base stat? Actually, they're majority male, believe it or not. But it clearly has a much more feminine look to it. Let's see here. What's this thing's base stat total again? Because, I mean, when you look, okay, it's 475. It's actually nowhere near as strong as Volcarona. But, that said, it's still basically the opposite to Volcarona, where Volcarona is bug fire, this is bug ice. And I mean, I played with a Frostmoth on my team in my first playthrough, and I liked it. I liked Frostmoth quite a bit. It's actually despite the fact that bug ice, it gets murdered by fire types, and they don't fare very well, I believe, against rock types either. Other than that, though, the bug actually helps mitigate a little bit of the fighting weakness for ice, and the ice type helps. Actually, doesn't really help much against, like, say, flying or I can't remember what other is bug's other weakness. I know they do. You'd think ice would be a weakness, but it's not. Anyway, but it's clear it's the opposite to Volcarona, or at least from type perspective. It's also the more feminine one, and they talk about how its scales fall off, similar to on its wings, similar to how Mothras do. So, made sense to go this route. Now I get into the three where I had to think a bit more on this. Although the second one that made it to the list was actually the final one we'll talk about, because it's the only non-bug on the team. Now, when you talk about Mothra, you don't talk solely about its adult form, the Mothra itself. You also got to factor in the fact that Mothra shows up a lot of the times as the little baby grub caterpillar. Sadly, there is no Mon that really looks like that. Honestly, I wish, like, there was a Pokemon that looked like Wormmon from Digimon, because it has the right mouth, roughly speaking. There is no Mon that really has a good mouth to represent Mothra in its infant larval state. So I just went with an OG here, Caterpie. And you can make an argument these are much larger Caterpies. Like, Caterpies, I think, are only like a buck high, well, roughly like a foot high. But, you could make an argument these are maybe like 2 or 3 feet high. Like, for some reason, they're abnormally large Caterpies, or a Caterpie on the team. And those exist in the Pokemon world. We've seen that with Magikarp multiple times. We've seen that with Charizard. So we know that abnormally large Pokemon very much exist in the Pokemon world, so why not a very large Caterpie? And obviously it's famous for it's string shy. It's one of the only attacks Caterpie really knows naturally. And it's the thing that especially the larva stage of Mothra are very well known for. So Caterpie made sense for that. Next up, though, we have a Pokemon that I had to think on who was going to represent this aspect. Because I had to first off think of another aspect of Mothra to use. And one of the things that gets pointed out is that Mothra tends to, at least in the later series, particularly the Monsterverse, and I believe was it GNK or it was one of them, I think the Millennium series or the Heisei series. Mothra tends to have a stinger on her abdomen. So it would make sense. It made sense. I'm like, okay, Pokemon with a stinger. Well, there's a lot of them. But there is also a technique called Fell Stinger. I'm like, okay, that can narrow it down quite a bit. So what Pokemon could best represent Mothra that knows Fell Stinger? And I'm going, and it's not a lot of Mon that can learn Fell Stinger. Even like through egg moves and stuff like that, there's not a lot of Mon. But ultimately came down to Vespiquen. I've always liked Vespiquen. I try to, if I can get the opportunity to play with one, I will play with one because it's actually a pretty good Pokemon. But Vespiquen can learn Fell Stinger, which represents that aspect, obviously. But it's a queen bee, which can easily be interpreted as Mothra being considered the queen of the monsters. And I like that idea. I mean, yes, she's a bee, and honestly, it'd probably make more sense to link her again to something more like Batra, or was it Megaris or something like that? That weird dragonfly with a stinger that got all fought in the Millennium series. But ultimately, I think that was a good choice. Which leads us to our last month. This is the one that stands out among the group. So right now we have a nearly pure bug team at the moment. But we do at least have some different type coverage with poison, flying, fire, and ice. So actually, their subtypes do a lot of good coverage. But the other thing that Mothra is known for is basically reincarnating. Every time Mothra dies, Mothra comes back. Because Mothra seems to be able to do this cycle of rebirth. Living, dying, and being reborn. How Mothra does this is never really truly explained, I think. I think she draws on some energy from like the planet and stuff like that. But she's ultimately functionally immortal. She can still die and be defeated, but she'll ultimately come back after a certain amount of time. So I wanted a Pokemon that is basically a Pokemon that can reincarnate. This proved, well, you'd think this would prove to be tricky, and in many ways it is, but there is a Pokemon that not only can basically do what Mothra does, but it even goes into a cocoon chrysalis egg state like Mothra does. And the last member of the team, everyone, is Xerneas. Xerneas is the Pokemon basically of life. And it goes, when it's in a hibernative state, into a cocoon that looks like a tree, technically. It's actually a Yveltal that looks like an egg. But it still goes to a hibernative state until it basically, comes back into the world. So, and then, does its thing, and then the cycle continues. So Xerneas actually is a perfect representation of the reincarnated cycle of Mothra, in my personal opinion. But that is just my personal opinion for the Pokemon team of Mothra. Volcarona, Vespiquen, Venomoth, Caterpie, Frostmoth, and Xerneas. That is the team I have created. What would you do differently if you would do anything differently? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you folks for the next one. Have a good one.